You haven't eaten in 2 days. But you're close. You tracked the herd yesterday. You found the prints. You mapped the whole route in your head. All you have to do now is get there. And then it starts to rain. Not a drizzle. A heavy, wind-driven rain that does not stop. It goes all day. Then all night. Then the next morning, and it's still coming down. Now you can't hunt. You can't read tracks. The mud washed them away. You can't cross open ground. Wet rock and bare feet means a twisted ankle, and a twisted ankle out here means death. The river by your camp is rising. And your fire, the one thing keeping you warm, keeping the predators back, keeping you alive, is starting to lose. You're not bored. You're trapped. Today, when it rains, you close the window. You make something warm. You pull up a blanket. Rain is background noise. It makes you calm. It makes you sleepy. For you, a week of rain is a cozy week. But for a human, 15,000 years ago, that exact same sound, the one you fall asleep to, could kill you 3 different ways before it even stopped. And what these people did in that week might matter more than anything they did on a clear day. The first way is cold. A wet body loses heat far faster than a dry one. By some measures up to 25 times faster. Without dry clothing, without waterproof shelter, a long, cold rain can pull your core temperature down into hypothermia in a matter of hours. And most of the world our ancestors lived in got that cold at night. Even in warmer regions. Up in the hills. In the wet season. Rain plus wind plus no way to get dry is not discomfort. It's a countdown. The second way is water itself. The best shelters, caves, rock overhangs, sit at the base of hills. Or near rivers. Exactly where heavy rain becomes a flash flood. Archaeologists have dug into lived-in caves and found thick layers of flood sediment right on top of where people slept. Meaning, the water came in while they were still there. And some of those caves? After that layer, they were never used again. The safest dry spot in the world can turn into a trap in a single night, and the third way, maybe the worst, is what else needs shelter. Rain drives every animal to cover, and sometimes the driest cave for miles is the one you're already in. There are cave sites where human bones and big cat bones turn up in the very same layer. Some of those skulls carry puncture marks that line up exactly with a predator's teeth. In our world it wasn't leopards. It was the saber-tooth, the dire wolf, the short-faced bear, the American lion. Rain didn't just make life wet. It shrank the whole world. Humans, predators, and prey, all squeezed into the same small, dry spaces. At the same time. And in the middle of all that, one job mattered more than any other: keep the fire alive. And here's why that was terrifying. For most of human history, making fire from nothing was not a given. Controlling a fire that already exists, and starting one from scratch, those are two very different skills. For a long time, plenty of people could do the first, and not the second, so if your fire went out in the rain, you might not get it back. You'd have to carry an ember from somewhere else, and people did. They wrapped smoldering coals in green leaves, or tucked them into a woody fungus that smolders inside itself for hours. A living lighter, carried from camp to camp. When they found the Iceman frozen 5,000 years, he had a fire kit on his belt: tinder fungus, flint, iron pyrite for sparks, spare tinder as backup. Even then, losing your fire was serious enough to carry dedicated gear against it. So when the rain hit, the first job wasn't shelter, it was the fire. Move it deeper, shield it with hides, feed it carefully, not too much, not too little. Find the dead branches under the pine canopy still dry underneath, split the wet logs to reach the dry heart inside. Use birch bark, which carries an oil that burns even wet. One person's entire day might be nothing but sitting beside that fire, feeding it, guarding it, for hours. Because that fire was everything: warmth, light, safety, cooked food, and the center of every conversation the group ever had. Letting it die wasn't careless, it could kill everyone. Alright. The fire's going, you're mostly dry, and you cannot leave. So, what do? You make things. The archaeology is blunt about this. Caves and rock shelters are packed with manufacturing. Stone tools at every stage, little piles of the razor chips that fly off when you shape a blade, concentrated in the exact spots where someone would sit by firelight and work for hours. And it wasn't only stone. On the other side of the world, in a South African cave, someone left a 100,000-year-old paint workshop. Shells used as mixing bowls, red ochre ground to powder, bone tools to stir and apply it. That's not desperate survival. That's production. On purpose. With a system. And then there are bone needles, delicate, precise, with a tiny drilled eye. You don't carve a needle while you're running from something. You carve it sitting still, focused, with hours to spare. A wet week gave you exactly that. And with a needle, you sew the fitted clothing that carries you through winter. And then, something small that changed everything. String. At a Neanderthal site in France, archaeologists found a fragment of twisted plant fiber, cord, deliberately spun. It's around 52,000 years old, the oldest direct evidence of string we have. And in a German cave, a tool carved from mammoth ivory, about 35,000 years old, 4 holes and spiral grooves, built for one purpose, twisting fiber into rope. Someone sat in the dark and carved a rope-making machine. Making cord is slow, repetitive, patient work, the perfect thing to do while you wait out a storm. And rope quietly rewired the species. It ties things together. It builds better shelters, it becomes snares and traps. It binds a sharp stone to a wooden handle, and now you have a spear, an axe, an arrow. A staggering amount of human technology runs on a piece of string, and string was almost certainly invented by someone stuck inside, waiting for the rain to stop. And it wasn't only tools. People were making the shelter livable. In one South African cave, there's something you wouldn't expect from 77,000 years ago. Bedding. Actual bedding, layers of grasses and rushes, arranged into sleeping mats. And the top layer? Leaves from a plant that repels insects. The bedding was burned off now and then and replaced to keep it clean. 77,000 years ago, someone wasn't just surviving in that cave. They were doing pest control. They were making it comfortable. They were making it home. And then the tools and the rope give way to something else. Art. Deep in a French cave, there are paintings around 36,000 years old, lions, horses, rhinos, bears, drawn with a skill that still stops people cold. The artists understood anatomy, movement, perspective. Animals mid-stride, muscles tensed, heads turning. These aren't doodles. They're the work of people who watched those animals for thousands of hours, then rebuilt them from memory, underground, by firelight. And it's not one cave. On an Indonesian island, figurative art goes back at least 45,000 years, the oldest we've ever found. Here's the strange part. These paintings aren't at the mouth of the cave, where you'd shelter. They're deep inside, down narrow passages you have to crawl through. Someone carried a little fat-burning lamp into total darkness, and painted. Nobody does that when the weather's good and the hunting's easy. You do that when you can't go outside. When the rain has fallen for 2 days, you've already sharpened every tool you own, and there's nothing left to do but go deeper into the dark and make something. Now think about what a week of rain really does. It takes 15, 20, 30 people and locks them in one small space, together, for days. So you talk, you listen, you share. An anthropologist once compared daytime talk and firelight talk in one modern group. By day, people talked logistics, land, resources, who did what. But at night, around the fire, over 80% of the talk turned into stories, songs, and ceremony. The firelight changed the subject. It softened faces, dropped the tension, opened people up. The campfire wasn't just heat, it was the original social network. And what moved across it wasn't small talk, it was survival. Where the water hides in a dry summer, which plants are safe, how to track a certain animal. And beyond that, stories, myths. Explanations for why the rain comes and where it goes. Every ancient culture has rain mythology, and someone made those stories up, almost certainly while sitting inside the very thing the story was trying to explain. Some oral traditions have been matched to real events thousands of years old, passed down by nothing but people telling each other, over and over, through the long wet nights. So a week of rain wasn't dead time. It was transmission time, when knowledge moved from the old to the young, and the memory of the whole group got retold, and kept alive. And here's the part nobody expects. Rain wasn't only the enemy. Sometimes, it was the best thing that could happen. When the rain stops, the ground is soft, and soft ground holds perfect tracks, deep, clean, detailed. You can read exactly which animals passed, how long ago, how fast, and where they went. Some of the best hunting of the whole year comes in the days right after the rain. Rain also meant water you could gather and store. Rock basins that fill clean, some of them carved deeper on purpose to hold more. And rain brought food that wasn't there before. Mushrooms and plants explode after a storm. Tubers pull easily from wet soil. And insects come up. Termites swarm after tropical rain, one of the most protein-dense meals around. No tools, no weapons, you just gather them. A wet week didn't shut the food supply off. It changed it completely, and the groups who understood the change ate, while everyone else went hungry. So, what did they do when it rained all week? Everything that mattered. They kept the fire alive. They made the tools they'd hunt with next. They sewed the clothing that would carry them through winter. They twisted the rope that held their shelters together. They ground the pigment they'd take deep into the dark. They told the stories that carried survival across generations. And when the rain finally stopped, they walked out into soft ground covered in perfect tracks, and got back to work. Rain didn't slow them down. It gave them time to prepare for everything that came next. Every tool, every stitch, every story, every painting came out of the downtime. Out of the hours they couldn't go outside and had nothing to do but sit by a fire and think. Boredom didn't exist for them the way it does for you. Because when the rain is hammering outside, and what you make with your hands in the next few hours is what keeps you alive, you don't get bored, you get creative. And that might be the single biggest reason we're still here. The same first Americans who feared nothing, who were free, who owned the night, here's how they beat the flood. So next time it rains for a week, what would you make? Tell me in the comments. The first 3 chapters are waiting.